you tend to have this I own my data and no one else can touch it. That's another thing that kind of we try to cross over. Hey, think about what are the dangers and the risks of not sharing instead of what is the risk of sharing.
Hello, and welcome to the Partnerships podcast series by UIN. I'm Sarah Jabber, Director at UIN, and your host for today. In this episode, I'm joined by Ville Krannila from Aalto University to dive into their journey of implementing and embedding a CRM culture. Ville shares how Aalto is using CRM not just as a tool, but as a catalyst to break down silos, connect data across functions, and strengthen partnerships with industry and society. From navigating cultural change and overcoming resistance to data sharing, to building step-by-step solutions that make collaboration smarter and more impactful, this conversation offers practical insights for universities striving to be more connected and to manage partnerships more effectively. It's a very exciting topic because CRM is sometimes hailed as the golden solution for external engagement. Everyone wants one. It's the answer to breaking silos, coordinating partnerships, and making data-informed decisions. However, we also know it's very complex. Implementing a CRM can be messy and can even be divisive across institutions. So I'm very happy to have Ville Krannila with us today. Ville is head of CRM and Analytics at Aalto University in Finland. He has over 25 years of experience in CRM projects and training, CRM strategy, master data, and system enhancement in both the education and public sectors. At Aalto, he's been leading the CRM efforts and currently implementing the CRM culture and processes within various functions across the university. And today, Ville is here with us to share his experience and how Aalto has approached the journey and share what others can learn from this experience. So Ville, welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Nice to be here. Great to have this discussion and always happy to talk about CRM.
Yeah, it's like your passion, I assume.
Yeah, I always say that I love it and it's the greatest thing in the world. So,
Great.
all good.
Thank you. So looking forward to hearing why it is the greatest thing in the world. But let's kick off by talking a bit around your journey and specifically with Aalto. When did this initiative start? What prompted the university to pursue a CRM or to prioritize this approach? And what were some of the challenges maybe you were trying to solve in the initial phase?
I was really lucky in a way. Now that I think back on it, I've been in Aalto for 8 years now. So it's been an 8-year journey, quite a long time. And before that, I was already working on CRM projects in many places and I'm trying to implement it. And I came to a situation where the strategic decision had already been made by the management. So there was a commitment that we're gonna put the CRM in the focus point, and it was one of the spearheads of our digitalization area. There was a decision to create a new unit, which was advanced and corporate engagement, which actually included alumni engagement, corporate engagement, fundraising, and career services. And one of the teams there, besides all of these, was CRM and Analytics. So I actually got a team of people to do this, where before I had been used to being by myself. Ville put everything together and make CRM work and have everybody utilizing it, which is unfortunately a situation a lot of the universities still face today. So I came into a situation where the decision had already been made by management and there was a commitment, there was a sort of a funding and structure, and we had decided that this new unit was going to be the business owner of CRM. So these are really crucial things that need to be in place, in my opinion, before starting this journey and having like the backbone of the whole thing. So I came into that situation, and then I started together with my team and specialist group of people, great people, to build it gradually, step by step. And there was a lot of work. It wasn't in a perfect place, and it's still not in a perfect place. So we're going to continue it at least for another 8 years, I think. There's plenty of work, but all of these decisions had been made, and we already had a system, and there was all of those technical things in place, big things. When I joined, and we got to expand on that and build on that. So that was definitely an advantage. That place.
So you joined 8 years. How long before that had the process already started with the decision? And
roughly, there was one person in my team who had been the project manager in that earlier process. It was like a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years before I came to Aalto, that the technical solution was already in place and all those things. And a couple of years before that, when they started to actually think about, should we have a CRM and what should we do, and have all these discussions. And there was already a bit of user implementation and dashboarding and all that going on. So there was a lot of background, like for 5-6 years before I joined.
Okay.
And I had it made in a way to come into this situation. So that gave me an advantage and my team an advantage to get on this.
Yeah, that's why we also call it a journey, right? It is something that takes quite a long time. But I'm really curious about you mentioned how already in that unit there was an area dedicated to CRM and analytics. From my view, that's a little bit unusual with most universities to already dedicate a set of resources or staff focus on that. How did that work for Aalto?
That worked really well. I think in some of the universities already they have a dedicated person and they might even have two persons. So in a way, the other universities are going to that direction. So there's a realization that you need resources and you need a business owner and you need people to do this. So they are going to that. But definitely to have a clear business ownership and then having an own team responsible for all that is definitely an advantage that we had. And I think it was down to all these things that I mentioned in the beginning of having a commitment, having a decision. We also decided that CRM was our master data for external partnerships. So that was like, okay, how we have made this decision, what do we need to be able to exceed that and have the 360 view on our partnerships? What do we need to do that? We cannot do that without people. We cannot do that without a team. We cannot do that without a unit. And also one thing that helped was that my supervisor, who was leading the advanced and corporate engagement unit, was really behind this CRM, like totally 100% behind it, and probably had pushed it before I joined Aalto that, hey, to be able to run this unit, to be able to have the CRM ownership, we need a team and we need CRM and analytics. That's my understanding of what happened before I joined. So all of this is something that is required. And a lot of universities and people ask me, well, why doesn't this happen anywhere else? It's difficult to say, and obviously the structures are different, but I think we are going to that direction in other universities as well. What I've been hearing and talking to many people is that in order to have a successful CRM, you need investment, both resources and commitment and all that.
So maybe to build on that, I think I mentioned CRMs can be, or the concept of CRM can be quite complex. And sometimes some people look at it as it's a tool, it's a system, or we just buy a CRM and it's going to solve all of our problems. With the work you've been doing across the last few years, how have you managed to bring different faculties or different functions on board and break some silos that exist across the university?
The start of, we haven't really solved that first thing. So it's an ongoing issue that people see it as a tool and they still see it. So it's not like magically everyone understands that it's not a tool, because if you think about CRM, the first thing you think about is a tool, and that's okay. And then you step over that and start to expand on the knowledge and start to expand the knowledge on master data and the processes and all that. And that is part of our onboarding process, and the whole implementation is that we try to start it, and it goes to the second thing that you brought up, how to break those silos, is that we do the onboarding as a service model kind of way, like service management, without doing it probably properly, because we're not the service managers really, but we realize that we have been doing it like that. So we start with a kind of needs assessment. We start with what are your customers, who are your partners, what do you want to achieve, what are your operational processes, for example, before we talk at all about the technical issues, data or anything like that. Comes much later if we do a big user implementation or functionality, and that takes a long time, but then the end result is worth it, I think. And those silos, they are still there, but we have been able to cross them. And that's one of the reasons I think CRM is really great, is that you cannot be in a silo. So for us, it's great because we have to actually not be a total expert, but we have to understand all of the university's core processes. For example, in such a process management tool that our CRM is, we need to understand innovation process, we need to understand campus lease engagement process, we need to understand finance processes, fundraising processes, corporate engagement, alumni engagement, career services, all, and probably 10 to 15 more, at least on a kind of basic level, to be able to implement CRM. So it's in the core processes. And then when they become part of the centralized master data, they see what the other user groups and functions are doing that. And we spend a lot of time focusing on reporting and KPIs and impact, especially later on showing the reports on, okay, these are your customers, these are your partners, this is what they are doing with this other unit or this other team just around the corner or behind the wall there. And then they realize, hey, it's good that we sync these things. And this is the kind of the oldest benefit of CRM, is that I go to a company and talk about these issues, and then my colleague goes there to the same place next day and is totally unaware that, hey, it was already a person from your university yesterday, and you don't even talk and know about these things. And obviously, this is at the end of the day, we are trying to solve issues to serve our partners better. And that's like the main goal. It's not to help us in our work, but to help us to work to serve the customers and do a better partnership work and to understand our partners better. And then by doing that better, we also help ourselves and make our lives easier. So that's the main realization. And also the data sharing and data culture because you tend to have this, I own my data and no one else can touch it. You've probably heard this before. So that's another thing that kind of we try to cross over. Hey, think about what are the dangers and the risks of not sharing instead of what is the risk of sharing, because usually it's vice versa. So those are the things.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot in what you've shared that I want to touch on, but maybe I'll break it up a little bit. It sounds like at the moment you're really looking at it almost like end to end. So a holistic view of data, of contacts, of engagements with the university. We've seen examples where universities might maybe start in one area. So we're going to implement a CRM, let's say for alumni engagement or for student or maybe for partnerships or industry engagement. How would you advise approaching that? Do you start small and build up, or do you start with this wide lens?
That's a great question and really important. I would start small and do it well and then gradually expand. And that's what we did in a way that we already, when I joined Aalto, we had the alumni engagement, we had the corporate collaboration, we had some of the fundraising elements and something else, some of the events and event management, newsletters and a bit of that side. But then we started that, hey, let's put these, because there was a lot of work that we needed to do on those areas. Hey, let's put these expansion things on hold at least until we look at what we have, and let's put these together and do it well, and then gradually expand. So we onboarded one at a time. Slow. It might take a year to onboard one functionality. I mentioned, for example, innovation management. That took 2 years to implement, and lease engagement took 2 years to implement. So we did that gradually. So my advice is that, especially when you don't have that team, you don't have 10 people, you don't have 5 people, pick an area where you can. It's a kind of a easiest place to start, where you have the data, you have the willingness, you have the commitment where you need it most. Pick up one area, do it well, instead of picking 10 areas and then get to halfway because you don't have resources or time or people, and then expand on that. And when you get results from 1 or 2 areas, it's easier to resource it, and it's easier to have that justification for management because they are asking about it. Finance is asking, what do we get back if we invest on CRM? How many euros are we getting back, or how much it brings to us if we invest on it? And those are great questions. I would ask them too. So it's much easier to make that case if you have some results from one area than to expand too widely in the beginning.
Exactly. So justifying its use or showing the benefits of how it's helping the university.
Yes, exactly that.
So maybe going back to, there's a question that's come through, but it links into what you shared around the data sharing, how sometimes changing the narrative a little bit to, here is what we risk if we don't share our data. And you mentioned how we often hear, especially maybe academics or researchers, not wanting to share their contacts because they're personal contacts. How do you overcome that? It's a culture piece as well, building that trust.
Few things. I do get a lot of questions about the academic side of things, and we've done some pilots on the academic side, like having researchers or professors utilize CRM. Mostly, I think, and this might be controversial and there are other opinions, but I don't think their core task is to type in data to CRM. That's my honest opinion. They have their tasks and it's something else. But I agree that they have those connections and network. What I would do is that there are some areas or use cases where you could have a great experience is to, for example, I cannot go to the researcher and say, please utilize CRM. Then the question would be why? what do I get out of it? And then I'm not the right person to answer to that. To have use cases where, for example, a new professor or new researcher who comes into the university doesn't have a university industry network. So they would get access to CRM data. This is actually something we piloted on. This is the kind of network that we have that would be good for you. And these are the contact persons, key account managers. You can connect them, and let's connect you to some companies or universities. And these are the colleagues that could help you there. And then they get positive experience from that. And then you cross over again to the culture of I lose something if I give out my data, because that's usually the issue there. So my answer to that would be provide them something that they benefit from. And then the kind of barrier to share your data and all that gets smaller. And also think about, is it really the researcher or professor that you want to go to the system and put their information and all the activities and all that in, which is heavy to them and it's an extra work and all that? Or would a centralized office or an assistant or whatever, whoever that is somewhere, could do that, who is already doing that for a certain faculty or a certain school or something like that? That is something we've experimented on. Those have been good examples. And we piloted on giving a restricted access to data somewhere, and that has been also positive. But that's something that we need to work on more, definitely. But I don't believe in the fact that all of the professors and researchers in a university are going to go into the system and put all of their data in. That's not realistic, and that's not what they are supposed to do, in my opinion. They have other tasks to do, and it should be a good balance on having that information there and helping them where needed.
So the main users are the professional staff?
Yes, service personnel from mainly the service units. Some of the school users, but they are still kind of service level users. We have about 200 users, if that's important to know. So the amount is actually not that big, but we have over 40 functions. So that makes it challenging because the ways of utilizing CRM are really different across those 200 users.
Do you want to be a part of a global community where universities, businesses, and public organizations come together to solve the world's biggest challenges? At UIIN, we equip our members with the skills, tools, and strategies they need to create impactful partnerships that drive real-world change. Whether it's upskilling your team, strengthening your institution's partnership efforts, or becoming more entrepreneurial, UIIN empowers you with the knowledge and support you need. Join us today. Visit uiin.org to find the best plan for your organization.
Maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into the use, into data. For example, what kind of information do you store, without going into, of course you can't fully demonstrate or talk about the platform, but, what level of information is important? And there's also a question around how do you share that data or personal data while still maintaining the GDPR compliance?
Where do I start? We have defined, because I mentioned that the master data is in our CRM for the external partnerships. So we established master data KPIs. We have a company. We have the dynamic CRM system, so it's called account in the system, but that's actually a company. So that's like the center of all data. So what we do is that we pull everything related to a certain company centralized to that, and then we report it out as an account report for the users. So they can check any company and see, okay, everything that's marked in CRM for this particular company, I can check here on various levels. And then a second KPI is the contact. So this is the person who can be an alumni or a donor or a company worker who is working on a corporate collaboration or whatever. And we get that same data in there as well. But that second question is really something important of it. We don't have a contact report as such. We need to be really careful with the personal data, obviously. How we've tackled it is, this is something that gets asked a lot, is that we push forward the fact that, again, for example, we serve our alumni by having their data as good as possible. If their data quality is great and good, then we serve their rights better. That's the approach that we take. And in order to do that, we need to put this data together and have this alumni register. And it's kind of law obligation by law for us to do that. So it's a combination of all those things. We restrict the access by, obviously, everyone who gets an access, mostly everyone is an employee. So it's like a contract-based thing. But they also sign an NDA separate NDA we made on understanding that what they're dealing is a confidential data. And with CRM, this is actually really important. The whole idea of CRM is sharing data. So if you start to restrict, the CRM loses its kind of essence. So what we try to do is that because we have a process management tool with a lot of data, you get to these certain areas like fundraising and innovation management where you have to restrict, and that's kind of but then by restricting just because you feel like this is sensitive and it's not something that you can make grounds on, you need to be careful with this because then you come into the area that the system and the whole CRM doesn't work. Everything's blocked everywhere. So by the end of the day, I always say this, you need to trust your co-workers because at the end of the day, they are handling the data and it's their responsibility on what they do with it. At the end of the day, you cannot have the system to do the work. The people do the work and people have to be abiding to the confidentiality issues and all that. And once this is again a thing that people need to cross over because you get paralyzed. I cannot do anything because of the GDPR and let's not do anything because that's safe. If you don't do anything, you won't fail, but then the achievement will not come. So that's always something that we say that you need to make sure that you abide to the law, obviously, but then you also need to just be brave and do things and not be stuck in the paralysis of data protection because that can paralyze you if you let it flow. It's my opinion.
I think also to your point around the data sharing and maybe linking that back to that culture shift, I guess it also requires a bit of a change in the mindset. How can we together do better? I'm just wondering, in your experience, what's been helpful with that? Maybe you can give us an example of how does the CRM help show that evidence or make data-driven decisions that strengthen partnerships and therefore lead to that culture shift?
Yes, the examples really help. And we've had a lot of these discussions on data sharing. And once you again cross over it and start doing that, and then people notice that, okay, nothing was broken and no one got harmed. And we could actually collaborate and do this partnership work together with this other team. And then they realize, no, nothing's wrong here and we can share more. So it's gradually building on that. So it's just by training people and making them aware of it and helping them and do collaboration. And that will help itself. Then another thing that has been really good is the reporting side of it. We utilize Power BI a lot on reporting because that's kind of like the Microsoft tool that works well with the Dynamics. And we have a master data reporting. And for example, we go to these user team meetings and show them that your data in your partnerships, what I talked about, the accounts and companies and contacts, it's on this level. It's just a school grade of 4 to 10, for example. Your data is 8, and this other team, again, behind the wall right there, they are doing much better. They have 9. And then people jump. Now I'm really interested. What can we do to make the data better? And then we actually have on the report, we can show them by doing this and updating this and this information, you can get to 9 next time. And then I come back and we'll see. So it's kind of like this healthy competition as well for people to update their data, because that's another challenge that people do their processes and work on their things, but then they should contribute to the whole master data, keeping all the basic information intact. And that's sometimes like, why should I do that? Because it's a job for them, because we all do this together as a university. And those kind of reports are a great way to motivate and show how important that is. So that's a good way to do that. I recommend that.
Exactly. And it also brings visibility and awareness about the work that they're doing to an institutional level.
Yeah. This is also a good point, that kind of, hey, what you are doing has an impact here and there, and they haven't realized that many times. Yeah. It's great.
Ville, I want to touch on one aspect, which is, do you think we're talking about with CRM, we're talking about data, but we're also talking about people and partnerships, often based on relationships and that kind of human interaction. Do you ever feel there's maybe a danger sometimes of over-relying on data? Maybe it paints a different picture to what is actually happening? Or how do you balance, I guess, the insights that come from tracking the data versus maybe sometimes the impact or the non-tangible outcomes of a partnership? partnership?
That is a challenge. And just as going to the tool, the Power BI I think is great because it visualizes clearly what is going on. So if you need an action point, you cannot get a better visualization of an action point. But obviously that only displays the data, and as good as it is, and sometimes people say, okay, Power BI report is broken, the data is broken, and it's only displaying that. So I think it's down to the fact that we have clear KPIs, for example, data KPIs. So if you have a team, you're like, what are the data targets and what are my team's targets and what is this data KPI that we follow this target on, and it's in CRM. And then you have a clear target, and then you have a clear goal, and then you implement the report, and then it should be really clear on what is the actual action point. And if you don't have this clear, you just, hey, let's look at this data, let's build a nice visual on this, and you don't have a clear idea on, okay, what is this utilized for?
Mm-hmm.
What is this actual action point that I'm going to do based on this visual and based on this result? And that's the danger which you mentioned. I think that we're going to jump. We're either not going to act on anything, or the data doesn't lead to anything or any decisions, and then you're not actually data driven. You're driven but not data driven, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like it has to be a strategy behind the data in a way.
Yes. So I think it comes down to the needs assessment and the targets and the clear definition of what we are going to do with the data. And we start on that with the onboarding. And we also bring in business owners and key users together to, hey, not just that we're going to have the data in CRM, but how are you going to lead with that data?
Yeah.
So we start with that when we start the implementation.
Great. I have so many more questions, but I'm so conscious of time. I need to narrow it down. I was going to ask you, do universities really need a CRM? But I think from the way the conversation started, I might guess your answer.
Well, I'm maybe biased, but yeah, absolutely. And universities even need it more than I think when you look at the basic companies that do a basic sales process, it's clear and that. But the universities have so much collaboration with the companies and industries, and it's a hybrid way of working. And even within university, there's so many processes and all that to be able to fully understand partnerships. And like I go back to that, how do we serve the partners better and understand them? I think CRM is crucial in that, so definitely needed.
Do you think your partners notice a difference?
Yeah, we've actually had cases where we've gone to our partners and presented a report on what we are doing with a company, and they haven't had that knowledge. Like they have said, oh, you have this information. For example, how many theses have been done to this certain company by our students. They don't even know that. So they've actually told us that this helps. So that's the greatest feedback I would get back.
Yes, great validation.
Yes, exactly, on the impact.
Thank you. And final question. You bring so much great insights and a wealth of knowledge for the universities listening in on this conversation. If you could take, I was going to say one piece of advice, but maybe I'll give you three key components that you think have made this approach successful and that can be potentially taken on board for those looking to implement or who are in the process of implementing such a CRM.
Yeah, some of those I think were mentioned. I think it's better to do something, focus on one thing, do it well, and then gradually build on it. That would be my advice. Define your business owner and clear targets and make sure that the management is behind it. And then you have a clear goal and roadmap and go ahead on that. The thing I mentioned earlier, do not be afraid of failure. You're going to fail. I have failed many times. And we kind of talk about this as a learning experience that, hey, we failed, but let's do it better. And we learned on this and then go forward and make sure that you do things and bravely go where no man has gone before or whatever. So that would be my advice. Then the third thing is that focus on being solution based. There's always a solution and there's always a way to do things. And these modern systems, tools, they are not obstacles at all. They can do anything as long as you're willing and you define your targets and all that. So the technicality is not an obstacle. It's kind of like an opportunity for you to grasp. So those are like my points.
Excellent. Thank you. I really like that solution mindset. So not looking at the challenges, but focusing more on the opportunities and what you can do with it. Ville, thank you so much for joining us and for being so open and sharing your insights and your experience. And Ville is very kind to provide his contact details. So if you would like to maybe pursue any other questions, feel free to reach out to him. Otherwise, join other UIN events where you'll most definitely see him, such as our conference. And if you'd like to listen to more events, you can always tune in to either our podcast or go to our website and check out what we have lined up for the next few months. Thank you again, Ville. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you to everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. It was great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion. Follow UIIN on LinkedIn. And if you're enjoying our podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review in your podcast platform of choice to help other people find this content too.